Let's bring in my panel to get their view on all of that. For Monday night panel here, we've got from Brisbane, Sky News host Gary Hardgrave, and from Perth, broadcaster Jane Marwick. Well, Jane, what's your reaction to what I've just said? Am I on the money or way off the mark?
As per usual, Peter Credlin, bang on the money. And I give you the example. Last time you and I spoke, I was in the seat of Canning with Andrew Hastie. The personal swing against him was the lowest in the state. It was 4%. And his two-party preferred was also the lowest, those combined. You look at a seat like Durack, which was Melissa Price. She had a really big swing against her. She had a high profile. She'd been a government minister. I also want to ask the question of the Liberal Party, are you welcoming to women who are conservative? And I look at people like Amanda Stoker, Nicole Flint, or do the women who get the pre-selections into the good seats or the good spots on the Senate tickets, do they mainly have to be so-called progressives, Peter? That's one of the big questions. But being on that polling booth on Friday, for me, I noticed a lot of women coming up and asking for Andrew Hastie how to vote, talking to me or talking to Andrew Hastie or other Liberal people there about the things that he had done in their community. So the numbers tell the story, Peter. There's no arguing with those.
Yes, because we women vote with our brains, not our genitals. Yep. Gary, I've got to ask you about Queensland. It absolutely held up for the coalition. I'd argue that's because the LNP's not woke, like a lot of the state Liberal divisions. Is that fair?
Look, Peter, it's pretty simple that the vote on Saturday was because there was a judgement made around Australia that the Prime Minister forgot to be the Prime Minister for people. The Prime Minister chose premiers ahead of the people all through the pandemic. And that and net zero 2050, they were the two things that cruelled him everywhere, including in Queensland, but to a lesser extent, because there was some breakout commentary about both of those issues. And we've got a terrific state opposition leader in David Crisafulli, his team, Ross Bates, people like that, who are actually out there articulating on real issues. And so, you know, your summation earlier about the lack of state seats, Peter Dutton, I think, has got half of one of his state members, if you get what I mean, crosses into his border that is a Liberal. The rest of them are all Labor. So it's got nothing really to do with that. It's all about the issue management, the performance. I mean, you look at the way Terry Young held on to Longman. It's purely off the back of the way they handled the issue. They concentrated on the economy, and men, women, or whatever were interested in that sort of narrative. The LNP did its job and did it well, but people were looking for a protest vehicle. The Teals were a reputable protest vehicle in some areas. But let's not overplay the climate thing. They were just simply a vehicle to say no more ScoMo, and they got their way. It was a targeted attack against the moderates. This was really, though, a campaign in Queensland that was built around the strength of the economy and indeed the fact that there was a very on-the-nose state government here. So I think that is probably a couple of the elements that made a difference. You got to dance with the one that brung you, Peter. And a lot of those people in those Sydney and Melbourne seats just didn't. They thought they could go off and play with the cool kids, and the electorate said, no, we want you to be true Liberals. The Teals provided a vehicle for that protest. Pretty simple. Don't go to the right. Don't go to the left. You've got to go to the right. It's crazy to try and think you could out-left the left. You're mad.
Jane, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I've got a saying in radio, when radio stations all do the same thing and wonder why they don't rate the whole street selling donuts, try Lamingtons. I heard it time and time again last week. I also want to point out that in that seat there was a very strong female Labor candidate, and the Liberal candidate still managed to hold his seat and not have a big swing against him. I think it's very, very important. And Peter, your point is give the electors a point of difference. And I'm telling you now, cost of living is going to be absolutely massive. It's all well and good for people in these rich seats. All well and good in these rich seats where you can afford another couple of $100 on your power bill, Peter.
All right. I got to go. I'm sorry. We're right up against the clock. We've crammed a lot in here tonight. Gary Hardgrave, Jane Marwick, thank you for your time.